Hey, real quick, before we get into that episode, do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. That way you don't miss out on any marketing nuggets. Enjoy the show.
And I've seen people, like this before, that if it's not a benefit to me directly, throw the card away. My point with this is that you never know where life's going to take you with this. So if you just dismiss things because it doesn't have an immediate benefit to you, you're really kind of narrow-minded on that. You're missing out on a lot of things.
Hi, I'm Josh Owen. As the owner of a video marketing company in New Orleans, I've been on the quest to learn everything I can about marketing. Everyone has a different style, different strategy, and a different experience. Is there a wrong way to do it? A right way to do it? Let's find out together as we make marketing make sense. Welcome back, everybody, to another fantastic, wonderful, magnificent episode of Make Marketing Make Sense. Today, I'm joined by a very close friend, Jim, the chapter director of Startup Grind here in New Orleans, and welcome to have you in. Thank you so much for coming in, man.
Thank you, Josh. I've been hearing about all the work that you're doing at Comfystone for a long time now. And I've gotten a chance to come out to the studios before and look at it like on the off hours, but it's really cool to see the whole production that you've gotten. And
yeah,
this is not my forte, so I feel like I'm the deer in the headlights right
now. Well, listen, the lights are bright, but don't worry about it. But there's no lights here. We're all just having a good time, just conversation, drinking our coffee. Well, today we're specifically talking about the entrepreneurial scene here in New Orleans. I think you have been in the entrepreneurial scene for, a little bit of time here to kind of get a grasp on it.
It's interesting. It's been a weird transition for me. I guess best thing is give you a little background here. I started off, as a traditional academic teaching, and I was tasked at one point to develop a biotech program at one of the community colleges here. And when I started developing that program, I received a National Science Foundation award. And in that process, the idea was that you were developing high-end technicians to go into the local businesses. So it specifically was for them to go into industry, not to transition them into four-year degrees or anything like that. And so I started, researching our biotech industry here. And most of our biotech, it really at the time, and still is, very much entrepreneur, small to medium-sized businesses. Yeah. We don't have the huge biotech hub that California enjoys or Boston, but we have a really nice growing industry, and I know we're going to talk about that in a minute. But so I started trying to figure out what kind of makes that industry tick. And I came across Steve Blank's Lean Launchpad and Business Model Canvas. And I'll tell you that this was a kind of life changer for me in the way that I viewed business development and entrepreneurship. So before that point, traditional academics, I wanted nothing to do with business, that I thought these two things
really?
Oh, yeah. No,
that's hard to believe.
No, these two things were completely and totally, I had never taken a business class as an undergraduate or graduate school, and these two things were completely separate from me. I just thought that there was really no place in my life for that. And one of the things I really liked about Steve Blank's work is that you build a hypothesis just like you would in the sciences, and you go about testing that. So who are my customers? I think my customers are X, Y, and Z. How do I go about testing that? And I love this idea.
Wow.
And so I became a huge fan of this. I've actually over the years spoken with Steve Blank several times and met him at several meetings. And it was a kind of life changer in the way I viewed these things. And it was weird because the more I transitioned into, and learning more about our local ecosystem and business development, the less compatible I was with the academic side of things. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but academia is kind of its own silo in a lot of ways. They talk a lot about how they want to bring business development and everything, but their metrics are kind of weird in a lot of ways. And so I don't want to kind of diverge into those things.
We'll talk about academics at some point. Okay. We'll get in there. Another podcast will come back on. We'll dive right in. But entrepreneurialism, and you started finding this love in entrepreneurialism and business in general. And so you take a deep dive into New Orleans and its entrepreneurial scene. Through your journeys, and especially right now, because obviously, I feel like now is so different from 4 years ago.
Oh yeah.
We had this huge thing. I don't know if you remember it, but it was like 2020. It's a big deal. But now we have this whole new scene that seems to be emerging. Like, what's unique about the entrepreneurial scene now?
So I think there's a lot of unique things, and so a couple of key points is we're one of the only cities. I think we're one of the 4 cities in the United States that have three medical schools.
Oh, really?
And so now with Xavier setting up their medical school,
I didn't know that was such a unique thing.
It's pretty unique.
Huh.
I think. I can't remember all the other
They're
3,
out there.
but we're really like the 4th city in the whole United States that has that, and so and there's a lot of innovation that comes from those medical schools, and so I see that as a really big point with the life science industry that we have that I kind of previously mentioned, and I think our life sciences hub is really growing exponentially at this point. The other thing that I see as kind of our new stuff is the green and the blue economy, and that's if you've been watching the newspaper and the big hydrogen production plant that they're producing on the way down to Venice, it's going to be a monster part of our economy, and that's only going to get larger and larger as we move forward. And you combine that with some of the traditional things in New Orleans, like our entertainment, our musicians, Metronome that just opened up through Idea Village is one of the big ones there, and also our food and beverage industry, of course, is world renowned. We're innovators in that space, and we have been for a long time. So that's just to mention a few things about it, but I think more than anything else, it's the atmosphere here. I ask people a lot of times when I meet them, especially when they come to New Orleans and they've just moved here a lot of times. It's weird. I'll have people that contact me out of the blue and they'll say, oh, I just moved to New Orleans. And I came across, just on a Google search, Startup Grind, New Orleans chapter. And I just wanted to sit down and have a cup of coffee with you, which is really cool. That's one of the funnest. That's one of the funnest things you can do because you people out of the blue are just kind of talking to you about their ideas. But one of the things that I've found that's interesting is that New Orleans, to me, is, and I grew up here, is a very binary city. And what I mean by that is you either absolutely love it or hate it.
Oh, yep.
And so you'll run into people that within 3 months they've said, I never want to move anyplace else. I'm here and I'm going to make my life and my family here. Or within 3 months, a lot of times they're like, I've got to get away. This place is crazy. I can't take the Mardi Gras. I can't take the festivals every weekend. There's too much traffic. All the other things that but so you see that, and so I think that's one of the things that really makes this city unique. It's not like you run into people from other cities and they'll say, well, I could move here or any place else. I'm just kind of going with the job. When I went to graduate school originally up in Knoxville, I was I wanted to come back home, and I had a lot of people like, why do you want to go back there? And this was before there was a big biotech industry here, and so and I my graduate studies was in plant biochemistry, and there's still not a lot of agricultural or plant biochemistry here. And so for that line of work, there's not a whole ton. Now, biochemistry is biochemistry. I can, split cells if they're human epithelial cells or plant cell culture. They're all the same to me. But there, there is, some differences there in just the funding and the emphasis in the city.
Yeah. Well, I think, and what I'm curious about, because like some of the things that you mentioned in your the things that you were saying, one of the things is like we have green and blue industries coming, but these are like big industries, and a lot of and even in the biotech, there's a lot of doctors out there like thinking like, oh, well, I'm in med school, maybe I can do this, do that, but these are like big, like a lot of times, like I feel like when I think about when I think about like energy and solar or whatever, wind, it's so big. As an entrepreneur, how do you start to figure out, or like just thinking entrepreneur, like how do you start to get involved in some of these bigger things, that are out there?
There's a couple of touch points here.
Yeah.
So of course, there's a lot of local things that happen in the city to keep this network going, and this network is such a critical thing to entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurship is typically a very manic depressive type lifestyle. You know
I don't know anything about that.
This like one day you're on top of the world. This is the greatest thing, and the next day you're going, oh, how am I going to pay my bills? What am I going to do? And it can be really frustrating in that respect. At the same, and so you really need a group of people that when it's going down and you feel like the world is crashing around you, that you can sit there and talk with. And I'll tell you, some of the best entrepreneurs that I've worked with, and so my day job working, I went to them one day and I was like, oh, the world's crashing around. And they were like, no, this is a great thing. This is, a problem that you've identified to solve for your customers. And so that little change in mindset is a big thing. And a lot of times you just can't see it inside your own bubble.
Yeah.
And so having that support group, like especially Startup NOLA that they have, that GNO Inc. is put together. Startup Grind is one of the ones. Idea Village. There's so many organizations here in the city. And I could literally spend the entire podcast just naming organizations here in the city. And the cool thing is they all work together so well.
Yeah.
When I was starting to move on board as the chapter director for Startup Grind, it was weird. It was one of the strangest interviews that I've ever had because it was like a 10-part interview.
Oh, really?
And they would say, name.
Is this with Google?
This was when they were, so they still collaborate with a lot of organizations, but Startup Grind's his own organization.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's not a part of Google like that.
Okay.
But so when they interviewed me for this, it was like a 10-part interview.
Yeah.
And so they would give you like a homework assignment, and they'd say, name 3 entrepreneurs that you would like to interview for fireside chats. So you'd name 3 and you'd write down why and everything. And then they'd say, name 3 organizations here in the city you'd like to collaborate with for events and things like that. So you went through all of these things. And at the end, they had an interview with me. And during the interview, they said, Jim, you have so many organizations in the city. How do you plan on working with those organizations and not competing against them? And this is a really great question because, we have so many things that go on in the city. How does it become, and there's only a size of a pool for, donations, funding, sponsorship typically. And so how do we all work together without becoming competitive and cutthroat and everything? And the truth of the matter is we work really well together. And I think everybody has their own little niches that they focus on. One of the things I personally think Startup Grind has, that brings into the community is a lot more of a global aspect. So we have chapters all over the entire world. And one of the things that I find really neat about that is, I can go to, Richmond, Virginia or Adelaide, Australia, and I know the chapter directors there. Or at the end of the month, we're having an online Startup Grind event with the chapter director from Hong Kong, who set this up.
Okay.
And he's actually interviewing the chapter director from Eldoret, Kenya.
Oh, yeah.
And they're going to be going over AI opportunities.
So it's not just a local network, it's a global network.
It's really cool. So I can, jump on a call with, a chapter director in Africa or a chapter director in, Brazil. It's really neat. And they're all really cool people.
Yeah.
So like, we had a chapter director meeting last week, and afterwards I got on a call with the chapter director that's up in Colorado, because one of the things she mentioned is, we need to take advantage of this global system more. And so this is kind of a call out to our local entrepreneurs or anybody coming to New Orleans in the entrepreneur business side. And it goes both ways with these interactions. What I mean is if you're, deciding to go to someplace, let's say on vacation in Australia, Africa, China, tell me and let me introduce you to the chapter director in that city that you're going to. And you can at least sit down and have a cup of coffee with them, possibly set up to do a Startup Grind fireside chat to tell your story, because that's one of the really nice things about Startup Grind is
you heard it here first, folks.
Telling your story.
If you're traveling, tell Jim, and he'll get you hooked up with people in other countries to learn about their story.
Or the other side of things. I've had people coming in for general meetings here in New Orleans.
Right.
And we've had them. I know when you were at Launchpad, we had 2 or 3 people come in and present at Launchpad. Osa was one of my friends up in Chicago.
Yeah. What was he talking about?
He was doing a digital media. So it was kind of an online audio media platform. And so
that's a blast from the past. I can't believe you remember that. That's crazy.
Well,
I can't believe I remember that.
Well, this is the cool thing about it, though, is so Startup Grind, they have, make friends instead of make contacts is one of their things. And at first I kind of said, that sounds kind of cheesy and all, but it's really true. I still text him back and forth. Yeah. I still keep in touch with him. He's moved on to other things at this point. But you still keep in touch with all of those people, and that's really kind of neat. I've been in networking events, and I used to be really, really bad at networking events. It's a struggle. I'm a wallflower. Okay, I really am. Everybody that I know will actually tell you that, but. It's something that I used to have to really work at. Yeah. Like I used to have to tell myself, because normally I really would just sit in the background for half an hour and then leave. And so I used to have to say, okay, when I go to this, I'm going to talk to 3 people. And it's just like everything else that you work on. The more you work on it, the easier it becomes for you, and the more natural it becomes for you. But with Startup Grind, it really is a group of people that I consider friends. And, and I've been to a ton of networking events where it's, give me your business card and I'll have my people call you and things like that. And I look at that, and even if, our business interactions or interactions, when you first tell me about what you're doing, it doesn't look like it's going to have any benefit to me. And I've seen people, like this before, that if it's not a benefit to me directly, I throw the card away. And my point with this is that you never know where life's going to take you with this. And so if you just dismiss things because it doesn't have an immediate benefit to you, you're really kind of narrow-minded on that. You're missing out on a lot of things.
Yeah. So, well, I guess and that's definitely the last thing. I mean, before I even get to that, I definitely think anyone listening should be inspired by your, courageousness going out there. Because some of the things you mentioned, I'm like, that passionate curiosity, that's such a core value that entrepreneurs don't necessarily recognize. It's so important to be passionate about being curious, about meeting people, getting new ideas, but also what you were saying about being systematic, about going out there, going to events and building up, and because entrepreneurialism is also about connecting with people, but it's also about pushing your limits and practicing and getting better at the things that you're not good at. So it's that's amazing. But the last thing I want to get into, I got a ton of things on this. Hold on. Is the last thing, because we got to wrap it up. So the last thing I want to talk about is, what can individuals and organizations do to help expand this entrepreneurial scene?
So, number one, me with Startup Grind, there's really 2 or 3 things that I am always looking for. I'm always looking for entrepreneurs, either local or people coming in from the city to share their stories. It inspires people, and a lot of people will tell you, "Oh, I can't do that," or no, I just I don't have any creative ideas in my head, and when you meet somebody else, it's infectious. They have a passion about what they're doing, and it really kind of lifts you up. And I mean that's really the only way to think about it in my mind. And so I'm always looking for people there. I am always looking for help building the chapter. And it was going really good before the pandemic. And during the pandemic, everything switched over to online, and it really kind of shut down the momentum, and building it back up has been, slower than I thought it would be. So, and when I talk about the idea of having people help me with building the chapter, what I really mean is people that are going to come in and put their own flavor into it. I don't like working with people that it's just do X, Y, and Z. I like people that have their own ideas,
Yeah.
And this goes back to the whole idea of entrepreneurship in general. People tell me all the time, they're like, well, I don't want to share my idea for this new thing because I'm worried somebody's going to steal it.
Oh, yeah.
And look, that happens. I understand that. It does happen. But one of the things that I found in the group of entrepreneurs that I've run into here and everywhere else is that everybody's chasing their own dreams and their own passion. And so you're not interested in taking my idea because you're chasing your own dreams.
Yeah.
And you're interested in saying, well, let me help you with this, and I can give you advice, or I can be a sounding board for you. But it's very rare, I think, that you come across people in that community that are going, oh, I like this idea. I'm just going to take this and run with it.
Yeah.
Academia is the other side of that. I think academia does the other side of
that. No, don't go to academia.
In general, that you do find people in academia that are really groundbreaking. But the second they come up with something new, a lot of times it's like picking the bones. It's like everybody jumps on it.
It's the land of vultures. Well, hey, that's why I think most importantly, people need to get out there and like you said, I mean, it's not about the idea; it's about the execution. Yeah. If Uber and Lyft can live in the same world, then so can you and anyone else. Yeah. So, but absolutely fantastic. I think everybody needs to get involved in Startup Grind who's not involved already. So if you're an entrepreneur out there, contact Jim.
Please.
And Jim's going to tell you right now how to get in touch with him. Where can people find you online?
Sure. Well, you can just type in startupgrind.com and New Orleans chapter, and it'll come up to our webpage. We also have all the other social media accounts, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. You can find me directly on LinkedIn.
But that's James.
Yes, I am listed as James on there. Yes.
So.
And so I'm always happy to sit down and have a cup of coffee. There, one of the things that happens a lot of times in New Orleans, there's so many events that go on that people will call me up and I'll say, "Oh, are you going to this?" I do this with you all the time. I'm like, "Hey, are you going to this on Thursday?" And like half the time it's like, "Oh yeah, I'll be there," or "Oh, I didn't know about this."
Yeah.
And so it's almost still a word of mouth in a lot of ways on what's going on in the city, because there's just a ton of stuff. You could go every single night to an event for entrepreneurship. You literally could
get connected with Jim.
7 days a week.
You'll be going to entrepreneur events every night of the week, so don't you worry about that.
And it's nice to have somebody that'll introduce you.
Yeah.
That's what happened with me. I ran into a few people, and they said, "Oh, well, let me talk to such and such," and so we're going to be hosting our event for Startup NOLA And Startup NOLA rotates around the city. We're going to be doing that in September. And we're going to be...
What day of September?
It's going to be the 3rd Tuesday.
Okay, so check it out. September 3rd. If it's already happened, sorry. Check out the next one, Startup NOLA.
But I'm going to tell you quickly, I know we got to run here to wrap it up, but we're going to be talking about two of the things that are really near and dear to my heart, and that is SBIRs, so Small Business Innovative Research Awards. And I was going to get into this about how do you, if you're in the heavy science industry especially, how do you start transitioning to the business development? Yeah. SBIRs are a great mechanism for that. And a program that runs kind of with that is called the I-Core program or Innovation Core. And the neat thing is that was actually put together by Steve Blank.
Oh, so
I'm a huge fan of Steve Blank. Yeah. Really a life changer when I started reading his work.
Awesome. So. Well, if you're not there, we'll see, come to the next one, but get connected with Jim. It's been fantastic seeing you.
Well, you'll be there, Josh. I know
I'll be there. So anyway, we'll talk soon. Take it easy. See y'all later. This has been another fantastic episode of Make Marketing Make Sense. All right, take it easy.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning into the show. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. This episode of Make Marketing Make Sense is brought to you by Comfystone. If your business needs organic social media video content, video ads, or video podcasting, hit up Comfystone at comfystone.com and follow Comfystone on Instagram and TikTok. Until next time, this is Make Marketing Make Sense.